All right, I think we have everybody back in the main room. So this is a time where we let folks that are new to the call, you can raise your hand using the feature in Zoom, or raise your hand on the screen and we'll call on you. You can say who you are, who you're with, and maybe where you live, and drop your info in the chat as well, and we will share this out later. So anybody new to the call want to say hello? Christina or Christine?
I'm Christina. Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm a content writer and account manager for DSLX, the business from Ray, who's going to talk later, I think. And I live in Bogota, Colombia, and I'm excited to be here. So, hello, everyone.
Welcome, welcome. Linda.
Sure. Hi, it's nice to meet everyone. This is my second call, but I've already been working very closely with the Open Assembly team as they've been partnering with UST to help them, effectively use direct talent, open talent, right through platforms. So excited to be part of this broader group of people, which I think has a consistent view of this space as I do.
Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. So let's see. Does anybody have any community announcements, any upcoming webinars, events, things they want to just mention to this group? You don't have to say it out loud if you don't want, but feel free to put it into the chat. But if somebody does have anything they want to mention real quick, now would be a great chance to do that. Anybody?
I have two things. This is Melissa. The first is I interviewed John Younger for my podcast this past week. So I'll put the link in the show note for anyone who wants to listen to his wisdom that he shared with independent consultants. And also I'm taking Robert's AI for Executive course this week. So I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to get more into AI and learn about how to apply it for your whatever you might be doing, but also talking with other executives about it. So
awesome. Anybody else?
I have one. This is Vanessa from Graphite on for folks in the Boston or New England area on June 13th. We'll be speaking on a panel at a Future of Work exchange event put on by Ardent Partners. So it'll be at the Harvard Club on Tuesday, June 13th in the morning. And it is, there's no cost, and it should be a really great event. I went last year, but just really anyone's invited who's interested in the future of work and particularly open talent as well. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'll put the link in the chat.
Lorraine?
So the 20th of June is World Refugee Day, and there's an event hosted by the Geneva Graduate Institute about freelancing, remote work for refugees. I'll be on the panel and a few other speakers from UNHCR and some academics. So I'll share it in the chat as well.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. Well, I'll make a quick announcement about our event. So as many of you know, we're hosting an event in Boulder, Colorado, early October, the 4th through the 6th. It's called Transform Work. We're focusing on open talent, all the things that you can achieve with open talent. It's a celebration of this community and all the people that are dipping into open talent, like the folks at UST, Wellmark, Commonwealth Bank, and we're really looking forward to hosting this. And what we're doing is we're asking folks that are interested in coming to go to our website and leave their contact information and submit a request to attend, and we're going to do a follow-up after that. So I'm going to put that link in the chat here in a minute. I'll also dump it in here a few other times, but if you're interested, I suggest you put your information in there because we only have a limited amount of seats and we want to make sure people that really want to attend get the opportunity to attend. So thank you for that. And with that, I think I'm going to pass it off to Barry Matthews.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Barry. I forgot to say, Ashley is on vacation. That's why you have to listen to me and not her this week. So
yeah, me.
She's off backpacking somewhere, and she'll be back for the next call. So Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. And I'm delighted to stand in and help to coordinate this discussion. In Ashley's notes that she sent me, she said, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the amazing of building, scaling, and managing remote teams. So, and we've got 3 guests. I don't know who's the good, the bad, the ugly, or the amazing, but I'm going to introduce them in a second, and I'll let you guys decide. But on the last community call 2 weeks ago, we talked to a number of freelancers. Certainly Ben's one of them and is on the call, about how they build their careers, what they get from the talent platforms that they work with. And it was a super interesting discussion. And so to follow that up, we're going to be talking about platforms themselves, and two platforms that provide not just individual freelancers, but freelancing teams. And some of the things we see at Open Assembly working with big enterprises is that they are becoming more adept, more mature at working with talent platforms. It's, you know, taking time, but it's gradually building, and they're putting more and more complex tasks and projects out onto platforms. And when I think we think about platforms, we often think about the big ones, the Upworks, the freelancer.coms, you know, linking enterprise needs with an individual. But actually, there are a number of platforms out there that provide services, that provide teams to enterprises, that get products delivered and projects delivered, which is a much more, you know, complex task than just being linked with an individual. And it raises, certainly the enterprises we work with, they say, well, how does this work? Is it similar to outsourcing or professional services? You know, how do you put a team together? How do you manage security, and how do you manage availability and team composition? And so we thought it'd be really good to get the platforms themselves to come and tell us about how they do it. So we've got 2 platforms with us today who offer very different services. So I urge you to ask them lots of questions and learn how they build their communities of freelancers to deliver services to their clients. So we've got Ray Berry, founder of DSLX, and in a second I'll ask Ray to introduce himself. And then we've got Adam Morehead and Dave Huntley from Distributed. So Ray, do you want to just introduce yourself to the team?
Yeah, sure, pleasure. Hi everyone. I hope I'm the good, but I'll also be sharing the bad as well. Hopefully no ugly. But yeah, I'm the founder of DSLX. It's coming up to 2 years now that we've been officially up and running, but it's been in the process for a while. We're a distributed team. We have 4 full-time members to our team. Some are remote, some are freelancers, some are employees. And we work with over 40 freelancers around the world, depending on the projects that we get. So we're all about building fast and furious teams for SEO and content, mainly for B2B brands, but this year we're branching out into B2C as well.
Awesome. Pleasure to have you with us. So thank you. And let's so Adam, many people will know Adam, I'm sure, but Adam, why don't you introduce yourself to anyone who doesn't know you?
Yeah, great to be back and great to see some familiar faces around here. So Adam Morehead, Chief Community Officer at Distributed. I lead our community, also our talent function. So our talent acquisition and talent fulfillment. So the way I like to look at it is how we acquire talent into our private community, how we nurture that talent and work with that talent, and then obviously how we fulfill roles and find opportunities for that talent.
Awesome. And Dave, I think you're CTO at Distributed, right? Can you do a brief intro as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm Dave Huntley. I'm the CTO at Distributed. I joined Distributed actually as a freelancer a few years back, and I was so sort of excited about the vision of giving, you know, really meaningful, purposeful careers to people who have chosen freelance life. That I thought, let's go 100% at it and see if we can build some good technology to keep people in good work.
Excellent. So let me ask a few questions, and please, everybody, keep questions coming in. But let me start with Distributed, because I know that business probably better than I know the DSLX business. But so Distributed have teams of freelancers, elastic teams, as well as some full-time employees, as I understand it, who then provide software development services and projects to enterprise clients, probably the type of thing that they might otherwise use a UST or a Wipro or an Accenture or a Deloitte or whatever to deliver, right? So how can you just explain how it works? How do you find the freelancers how do you ensure that they understand how to work to a methodology, those sort of basic things? You just explain how that works with your platform.
You want to start, Adam? Or?
Yeah, I can take this. So since I'm talent, right? So obviously we search globally. Being that we consider ourselves a private talent cloud. We work with our customers to understand what their talent needs are. So there's two approaches. There's our build the community. So we have a lot of requests for very specific skill sets, knowledge within the developer engineer pool, and we invite them into the community. And this is where I engage, and our team engages with the members to do a lot of events, virtual events, in-person events, do things within the community to engage everyone. And then we also have what we say going to market. So this is where we have customers requesting things like niche skills. And this is where we go and we go and search, again, invite everyone into the community. But that being niche skills, typically that's just like, can we find them a role right this minute, right? And while the community is more like, hey, we really like the idea of distributed, we really like the ethos of it just distributed, because we're working to find and create freelance careers for our members. And being that we are a private talent cloud, our goal isn't to be a 1 million member community. Our goal right now, we're about 1,600 members right now. I know who these people are, right? We've vetted everyone, everyone's been invited in, but we don't want to be a giant community. I really want to get everyone working, right? I want to have a high percentage of everyone that actually has a career with us. So that's our approach, global approach. We have a team dedicated, where I didn't really have this in the past, but where we had a team that just goes out and looks for people to invite into the community.
Yeah. And Ray, how does yours? I know yours is smaller and focused on content for SaaS businesses, right? As I understand it, but maybe explain a little bit more about that. But do your team members also work together to deliver a service to a client? The client doesn't buy individuals, right? They buy an outcome.
Exactly. They buy an outcome, and what we need to do on our end of things is make sure that we have niche writers or niche talent always on our books. So we spent probably about 6 months building our initial community of freelancers, hiring them, vetting them, testing them, making sure that we had like the talent to cover all of these different areas that we knew we were going into. And then as a new client comes in, we need 2 to 3 weeks lead time, and we build that team, we assemble that team. So that's a collection of SEOs and content writers and an editor and an account manager, actually, that will look after that client's account. And then that client just has that one person, that one point of contact, which is their account manager. So we kind of take building freelance teams for content and SEO and just streamline it, so that rather than a client having to juggle 8 freelancers doing different blog articles and different areas within their content marketing, they just have their account manager, and then we handle all of the juggling for them.
Yeah. Awesome. Do you find clients worry about continuity? Do they worry that, a freelance worker means that, they might take on multiple projects, they might only be there for a short time, they might have to be like a high churn of people delivering services? Do you guys get that from your clients when they first meet you? Do they worry about that?
We do. Well, most of our clients have come through us through word of mouth, so we haven't had too many worries. It's a lot easier sell when they're already sold to from someone else. So someone comes to us and just says, when can you start normally? But yeah, that is a worry, that a question that we've had from some clients is, what do you do if a writer leaves you? What happens? So, and the account manager is their project manager, and they specialize on that client, on that product, and they train and build those freelance teams for that client. So if we do have the case where a freelancer leaves us, then the account manager is able to, and should be able to take on everything until we can find a new freelancer to replace the one that we've lost. So that our account managers wear many hats. They're able to do a lot of things, but the idea is that they're able to distribute among their freelance teams and take things on if crisis needs it, but normally we're okay.
We have a similar, so where we have account managers that can help. This is where Dave and our delivery team falls in, where we can help a customer. But Barry, to your question, that is the first question, right? That, and besides IP and security, right? It's going to be like, hey, are we worried about? And this is for me, this is where we need to create a great experience for our freelancers. They want to be here, right? And they want to work through us. And then with our customers, them understanding, I think all of us here drink the Kool-Aid, but this idea of the talent cloud, like how many people do you actually have that know your brand, have worked with you in the past, the ability to have access to those people, right? And that's one of the things that we've talked to all of our enterprise customers about right now. Like that's what a lot of times the request is for a new person. They don't realize all the people that are still available that they've worked with in the past, right? And that's one of the things that that's typically our answer to that question.
Yeah. And you mentioned IP and security, so let's just talk about the second and third challenges I'm sure they raise. I'm sure you can handle IP from a contractual perspective, but how do you give them comfort, and how do you enable systems access? You're doing software development, so what sort of environments are your software developers able to access? Do they have a shared environment with a client? Do they use a VDI? How do you get over security challenges?
It's a mix of different technologies, to be honest. So what we try to do is create a bit of a win-win by creating a universal and consistent experience for developers, so that no matter what client, no matter what project, they're getting the same experience and they're able to be productive from day one. And then everything sort of behind that, all of the security behind the curtain, is something that we manage inside the core team, and our technical leads will make sure that environment's there so all of our client code is safe, and people are still able to be productive.
Right. Excellent. I see a question from Robert. So in fact, Robert, why don't you ask the question rather than me reading your question? Why don't you ask the guys the question you typed there, so we can have a conversation?
Sure. So I find, and I've done some work on this in the past as well from an algorithmic standpoint, but the hardest thing from a person wanting to be freelance is the predictability. And so I'm just curious what the communities are doing if you have a reliable community member who is looking to work X hours and make Y compensation, but looking to do that, for 6 months or a year, and looking for that kind of longer term commitment so that they can be an actual freelancer versus, always kind of going back and forth. Can I live off freelance, or do I have to go back to a career?
Yeah, that is a tricky challenge, actually. So I think our goal is to give people the work they want when they want it. Certainly for me, back in when I was a software developer, I might take on this technical leadership position, but then it might be Christmas and I'll write some code for 3 months with my headphones on. That it's a really important part of having a freelance career, right? To be able to change your focus and maybe take a simpler role, a more complex role. Maybe you want to learn a new technology, but you don't get the same kind of opportunities that you might do in permanent employment. So what we do is we've got some predictive analytics around our pipeline and the kinds of roles that we might be becoming available. So we're always optimizing for who might be the best team for things which are coming up, so that we get nice early availability for people in our community. And that way it sort of self-fulfills, if that makes any sense.
So,
yeah, and we have we have 3 strategic goals this year. Our second one is the data points around a freelance career, right? So how many members in our community have more than 9 months of work scheduled?
Wow. So you guys are sort of trying to transform work, really, right? The way we think about work, that you don't have to be employed. You're not employed by distributed necessarily. So, and in fact, I'm sure we'll have questions on compliance in a second, but you're a freelancer, but you can work for distributed 9 months of the year. You could then take 3 months off. You can then know with some certainty that you'll be able to go back into a project that utilizes your skill set and get well paid for it wherever you are in the world. It's a sort of nirvana, right? That we all think about, I think, from a freelancing perspective. It seems like you guys have made it work. Is that right?
Yeah. And actually, when you start thinking about it that way, you start diving into a whole other world of metrics you didn't really think about. But this goes to, Robert, to your question around like, how are we actually driving hours at that rate? Because if we're actually looking at it from a career perspective, we're now looking to put that team or put those individuals onto different teams or rotate them more often, as opposed to, again, the customer just saying, I just want more new people, or they're not thinking about the rotation, right? And we are, and the data points around even our own behavior of like, are we looking for a new opportunity for that freelancer?
Yeah. And on that compliance question, I was sort of thinking about, Janice has asked something similar about length of, so isn't the length of work directly correlated to labor laws in the state or country that you're working within? How do you ensure that the people who work on distributed or on DSLX for that matter are able to work as freelancers and are not subject to employee of record, or should an employee in disguise? How do you get over IR35 in the UK and equivalents around the world?
Dave, you want to tackle, or you want me to?
That's probably more for you, that one.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, we're focused in the UK. We're focused going more east. So we are not in the US from a distributor perspective for everyone in the room. So just to understand that. So the biggest hurdle we have is IR35. And we also offer IR35 to our customers. So there is a question of just looking at the compliance and understanding, like, how is the freelancer being treated? Is there certain expectations similar to the US around, being on site or signing in at 8 in the morning, signing off at 5, those kinds of things. So, we look at all the compliance around that and understand with the customer if it's inside or outside IR35. So we have a plan and a policy, and that's also one of the benefits we offer to our freelancers to say, we're going to help you with that.
Right. Oh,
So I don't know.
sorry. I
think-
I
I don't
thought
know.
that-
I don't know, Ray, how you're handling that.
Yeah, Ray, same question. Do you have compliance concerns? How do you get around that?
Not in the same respect, because all of our freelancers that we work with don't even touch on normally won't even touch on part-time, 20 hours a week, 10 hours, probably about 10 hours a week. So we don't need to worry so much about getting into any trouble with this kind of compliance, because our freelance projects, we spread them thin. So if one freelancer drops out for whatever reason, it's not a catastrophe, and we haven't put all of our eggs into one basket. So it works both ways for both our business structure and legal reasons as well for the freelancers.
Yeah. Do you both find that the freelancers who work for you work only for you, or do they work for other platforms as well? And do you encourage that? Do you care? What's the situation with yours, Ray?
Yeah. So I'll take this. I encourage our freelancers to work with whatever clients they want to work with. And sometimes that has meant that we've lost great talent. They suddenly say, I'm taking on this huge project for 3 months and I don't have the time to write for you anymore. But it's not something that I would ever say, hey, don't. If that's the route they want to go down, and I will never get in the way of them progressing their freelance career. So we've had freelancers leave us, and actually one of our core members of our team is leaving us in September because she wants to go and study a master's. And she told me, and she was so upset, and she said, I would never leave you for another company, but I really want to do this master's. And I said, go do it. We'll still be here. And I'll keep you as a freelancer. If you have time, I'll still be sending you work, but you just won't be doing X amount of work for us per month anymore. And so I'll always encourage freelancers to work with other teams, other companies, and normally it complements their lifestyle. And normally sometimes we get an introduction as well, and we end up doing a partnership or link building between companies as well. So the more the merrier, I would say, if they can handle the work. And if that means we lose them, then I'm totally okay with that if they're happy.
No, cool. I love that approach. What about with you guys, Adam?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're offering 3, 6, 9 month contracts. So typically people are staying with us and are focused on careers. Also, we have an SLA around paying everyone within the first 7 days of the month. So, we're very diligent about making sure that everyone's happy as a freelancer with us. So most of them that are working with us are with us. Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of them if we don't have a role for them right now, that they are working on other platforms. I just want to make sure that they have such a great experience with us that they want to come back, or they want to be like, hey, we prefer working with you, so please find me another role. So I mean, throughout my history, when I get that question, it's always, it's going to be like, hey, we must create a great community experience for them to want to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm being reminded that Mark has a question and then Ben has a question too. So sorry, guys, I see you've got your hands up there. Mark, fire away.
Thanks. Question I think probably directed to Ray. I'm sort of thinking about this from the demand side. In other words, what are the client expectations? And my question is really, what differentiates you from a traditional agency, which essentially, services a client with a blend of in-house and freelance talent, but doesn't necessarily declare the freelance element of it to the client and wraps that with some very good account management. So I just wondered what was, the differentiator between your model and that more traditional one.
Yeah, I think we upsell the fact that we work with niche freelancers. We upsell the fact that we have specific talent on our books. And whenever I'm talking to a client, I say, great, I know exactly the writer that like a prospective client. I know exactly the writer that I'm going to assign to you for this project. I know exactly the people that I'm going to feature you in this project. So we're very clear that if it's a larger project, so by larger project for us, I mean more than 3 to 4 articles a month. We have one client that we've turned out 50 articles for in the last 2 months. There is no way my in-house team can handle 50 articles at that turnaround rate. So I'm very open. I'm very clear that we work with freelancers. And I'm very clear that these freelancers are in a better position to be writing this article than your account manager or than myself. And it's up to that account manager to kind of collect all of those different freelancers' works and streamline it and make sure it's in line with brand guidelines and our SEO strategy. But our biggest differentiator between traditional agencies is that we don't hide the fact that we work with freelancers, but we keep you on one point of contact. So we'll be managing a team of maybe 8 freelancers and SEOs for a project, but you're still just going to have that one point of contact at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like celebrating the fact that you have access to, a diverse range of experts rather than just the pool that happen to be employed, which I think is a really good point. Ben, yes, question.
Yes, I have a question for Ray and then a separate question for David. So for Ray, when you say differentiation, is it because your freelance writers tend to have deeper subject matter expertise, right? Because content can be widely variable in quality. And then the follow-up is, have you seen any ask or resistance to, the fact that maybe your team would use generative AI to scale up the output? So that 2-part question for you. And then I'd love to ask David a question.
Remind me of the first part again. I'm dyslexic. So
first part is like, if you're covering specific Supreme Court ruling versus if you're covering AI technology, right? Is there deep differentiation in the subject matter of some of your freelance pools?
Yeah, I mean, when we decided that we were going to start off as a SaaS content agency, we said we need to get every area of SaaS on our book. So like we need to get med tech, we need to get ed tech, we need to get however many travel tech. I don't know the number of techs that we have in-house or out of house, but we needed to cover all of these bases. And we work with them, and some of them are full-time freelance writers. Some of them are people like me that have been in-house for a particular area and then have said, oh, you know what, I fancy writing on the side, or I fancy dabbling. So we kind of like encourage that, and their account manager turns into their editor and their support, and we try and lift them up as writers and support them all the way through. In terms of AI and generative AI, I mean, I think I have a lot to share on that. I don't know if we want to get into that now.
Yeah, no, let's go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen on some cases a real demand from prospective clients to say, we can't afford human written content anymore, but we still want to be doing content. Do you use AI? And does that mean that it comes at a cheaper rate? So I'm developing a new product model that is AI assisted content, which is I'm labeling as the bots and the brains, and it's prompted by humans, it's edited by humans, but the bulk of the work is done by AI. But the account managers will still make sure that it's in line with the holistic brand that AI is not quite able to understand yet. Yeah, it will get there. But this is the 2 offerings that we're doing. So I'm saying, okay, let's do an AI assisted model. And how can we differentiate that from our humans? What can humans still do so much better? So it's pushing us as human writers and only human writers to see, okay, what unique experiences do we hold that can still be AI and that validate the expense from the client, right? And we're having to really identify those and push those forward and say, this is what our humans are doing that is fantastic. And if you can't afford that, there's this easier version for you that is still good quality, but humans do it differently. And maybe you value differently better. But I'm trying not to say that one is better than the other because AI is here and maybe we go fully into AI assisted. Maybe everyone's comfortable with that. I don't know. I think generations will perceive AI differently. And I think we're yet to find out how Google marks AI or penalizes AI and how our perspectives consume AI written content when we know humans haven't put in their heart, blood, sweat, and tears into the content as well. So I'm open to both and I'm trying to differentiate the both and align sales packages for both.
I think one thing I would suggest is on the content moderation and fact checking, those are two areas where AI has struggled. And so I have a friend who runs a chain of local newspapers online. And he said they tried the experiment and they found that it would hallucinate quite frequently. And because of the difficulty of sourcing density of data around real-time, local events, they chose to use it as more of a editor than a creator of ideas. And then they gave it a bunch of prompts. It spit out some prose, and then they would have the humans fact check. And that was the system that they followed to be able to augment just the sheer writing of prose. But I think it's a really cool thing. But the question is going to be how do you price it? Is it value based? Is it output based?
Yeah.
So,
and I think over time, I think it's a really interesting, philosophical debate. Is that you have if Ray, you have two products. You have one which is generative AI content generated, and then you have humans just sort of doing your post final editing or whatever, and then send it off. Or you have one which is just delivered by humans, and the human one is more expensive. Do customers value that more because it's written by humans, or do they not care as long as the content is quality? And it's going to be much cheaper for you to use the generative AI over time with a human just doing the sort of post editing stuff, presumably, right? But I think it's super interesting to see how all this develops, right?
Yeah, definitely. And presumably it's going to be cheaper for us over time. We're yet to see evolving price tags on AI tools. And right now it's going to invest a lot of time from our end to be able to work with AI because AI still has so much to learn. So it is still an investment at the moment, and it's figuring out a price tag that aligns with that. And I think we've seen pushback from clients saying, no, we want only human written content. AI is absolutely not for us, not in 1,000 years. We have clients like Hotjar and these really content focused clients that are like, no, we will not touch AI, and they're stuck in that, and good for them. But then we have other clients that are like, we just need to get content out there. We just need to fill up, and they're not so fussed about it. And maybe their readers aren't so fussed about it either. So I'm trying to not let my pride as a writer get in the way of people's attitudes towards who wrote their content.
Yeah, and over time we won't be able to tell, right? That's
we'll ask you what Google does and see if it puts a stamp on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I just had one more follow-up. This was for David. And we started talking about this in our breakout session, and I've worked with a lot of software teams and had varying degrees of success and failure. But when you think about being a distributed team, being a freelance team, have you found more success doing team augmentation or owning entire streams of work? And how does one or the other approach, is it aided or hindered by using freelancers that may churn?
That's a good question. So how to answer this? Whether we own the outcome or not, I think what matters more than anything is the composition and the engineers that you've got on that team. In a similar vein to the conversation about AI doesn't care about your outcome. So regardless of whether we're going in with team augmentation, that presumes that clients know exactly what they want to build and they've got the perfect roadmap to get there. or whether we're going in and owning the outcome. The difference for us is a matter of responsibility on the technical leadership in our teams, on the project management and the product management in our teams, to maybe navigate more quickly, to maybe react to change in the industry more quickly than it might have done in augmentation, if that makes any sense. That answer the question.
Yeah, to a degree, right? Like, because I've seen teams where if they don't own the outcome, they have to learn a lot of practices. They have to learn the code previous to them. They have to learn the developer pipeline versus, but then they're part of staff aug. They tend to pair with engineers who know where all those things are. And so it's like, I don't think there's a right answer. I just think it's like, what is the risk you're willing to accept? And I've worked on enough teams to know often you start in one direction, and then by the time you get halfway through, you realize the business learned something new. And so I'm wondering if you've seen owning an outcome where you can, as a product and test unit, say, you wanted us to get this thing done. We recognized halfway through our sprint, it doesn't work, versus you gave us these tasks. So we have to complete the tasks, even though you learn that it doesn't solve the problem, right? It's agile.
Definitely more effective to have people own the outcome. I kind of liken it to, you remember the scene from Apollo 13, all of the things on the table, get a team of experts together, and the engineers, they produce something like engineered to suit the environment that they're trying to work inside. Versus your augmentation, I would like to hope that it doesn't change the degree of ownership that our teams have. Certainly, we would encourage people to be fully responsible for the outcome. But certainly when we are doing more sort of managed outcome and we're owning the business outcome, then definitely we will have a lot more conversation around what are the kind of things that our clients are trying to affect, what are the KPIs they're trying to move. And that might not be the outcome that they started out with. It might be more work, it might be less work. Regardless, what we're trying to do is always leverage it to get the biggest impact out of the effort that's put in.
Yeah. So how do you balance that with, like, they may not be comfortable giving you critical path work, and you're trying to build a great experience for your freelance engineers where it's new technology or cool business problem, right? This is the catch-22 when you're building freelance or consulting teams, is the balance between owning an outcome, cool work, new technology, versus you don't have total control.
Yeah, for sure. An awful lot of that, I think, comes down to character. There are certainly freelancers at different points in their life. Just tell me what you want, I'll get it done. And there are other people who are really, really invested in social good, let's say. We've certainly got lots of that kind of work. Benefiting actual lives, and that's really important and meaningful to people. But at the same time, if you just come off that kind of work and it's hard, intense work, really enjoyable but very hard and intense, then maybe you do want to something less onerous.
Yeah. I'm curious, can I jump in and follow, because my question was similar to that with Robert again. I'll give, for example, for me, sadly, I actually had a lead architect die on a project. And so in turn, we lost a lot of context. So I'm curious, and I'm hearing the CTO gentleman talking there, it sounds like the onus and responsibility is put on the freelancers versus the sales process of communicating when projects are run. We do the following in order to ensure churn. And so kind of coming at the same question, but from the opposite direction. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts there.
As far as sort of consistency for around churn is concerned, what we do, a lot of enterprise customers are suffering from the same problems, exactly the same kind of technical hurdles that lots of companies are suffering with. Technology is getting more and more and more complex. Certainly in the enterprise, you've got applications that have been around for 20, 25 years, perhaps. So a lot of the patterns and practices are very, very similar. We've developed a whole set of set pieces, set approaches, templated infrastructure as code, all of the sort of DevSecOps side practices that wouldn't ordinarily find its way into a platform, because it might not necessarily justify all the cost on a project by project basis. We can do that right from day one, so that when a team lands, that consistency is there. All of the infrastructure is going to look distributed. It's going to look like our stuff. Does that answer the question?
And not really. I mean, that's talking kind of from a documentation standpoint. I'm curious more how the organization, so documentation is one part of it, though, as we know, as engineers, documentation becomes out of date the moment somebody actually puts it in there, right? So I like that in theory. The reality is, what's the practice? What's the contract? You know, as you know, as an engineer, you know, if a client requires testing, usually you're multiplying the number of hours by 3, right? Just to get the testing in there. So you've got this interesting tension from a sales perspective of cost, right, versus outcome, and explainability in that sales process of, well, I'll give an answer. You know, for every project, we have 2 people that are sidelined and they're watching and ready to backfill. One's a, you know, a back-end engineer, one's a front-end engineer. I'm making that up as I go. And we build that into the project from the beginning, for example. So, you know, you're not the cheapest, but you know, you can also deal with adversity or conflict or issues as they arise, as most projects usually have some problem or another. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, yeah, and this is where, so we do have a delivery team at Distributed. So we do have project managers assigned to each of these engagements, right? To keep things flowing and understand those issues as they arise, right? So while it is a freelance team, we do actually have a resource from Distributed helping to actually manage that with the customer. Yeah, it's the enterprise expectation, right?
Hey, Robert, one thing I've seen on teams that I've been part of is if you have good engineering practices where, in addition to some of the product documentation, style guides around how you do your code and your architecture, and leaving comments in your code, even if somebody had to pick it up, they understand the logic that somebody used. And like, I've seen so many good teams where people leave, and the reason it's not disastrous is they took the time to do things like paired programming, and in the code leaving comments, naming things in a coherent way, not like David Huntley's variable, but like the scheduling automation, you know, method. And so like good code practices can really offset a lot of that churn because of somebody leaving the team.
No, I totally get that. I guess where I was coming from is I was looking from the vendors, right? What they're doing to ensure that success. And so documentation, I get, can be a good one. It can also be bad, right? Depending on who's reviewing it. Are there, you know, clear processes in place? Does the product manager understand technical debt? Do they understand strategic debt, right? There's so many nuances to any of these technical projects. I don't want to go much deeper, but that was where my question was driving from. Thank you.
I think just a sort of follow-up question to that, and it may be to both organizations, but I certainly think from a distributed perspective, you don't really fall into a category that already exists in an enterprise procurement manager's head, right? So if they think talent platforms, most procurement organizations or procurement managers don't know about talent platforms, but if they thought about a talent platform, they probably think about Upwork or freelancer.com or something, right? And your model is so completely different, but you're also not a consultancy in the same way that an Accenture or a Deloitte is a consultancy. You're not an agency either. You're not an outsourcer necessarily either. So you sort of probably fall between lots of different procurement category camps. Who do you find is your customer typically? And do you find that it's quite difficult to sort of find the right buyer in the organization because you're falling between those known categories and creating a new category of talent cloud?
Yeah, so typically our buyer is going to be CTO, CIO, CPO, and then them bringing us in and then working with their teams to understand how to engage with us. Now, in any of the enterprises that we're in right now, at some point you just end up in procurement, right? You do all that, then you're in procurement. So how do you, and then you're on, where are you on that drop-down list, right? So on that drop-down list, you know, we work to be an option, and we want to make sure that there's continuous education around that we are not the outsourcer, right? Because we are different. And again, this now comes into the talent cloud piece. So this is us evidencing talent cloud on a continuous basis. Now, with all of our enterprise customers, we have partner teams, right? Those partner teams on the customer side works to make sure that the story, the reputation, the message around Talent Cloud is understood. But again, that's always happening, right? So where we are in year 1 is different than where we are in year 3, right?
Yeah, and obviously all the client organizations are becoming more mature and understanding platforms, understanding private talent clouds. It's sort of nomenclature that they probably didn't exist a couple of years ago, right? So it should get easier over time. And then organizations like ours as well are all of us on this call are educating our customers as to how these things work. Same for you, Ray. Do you find, and it's probably a different buyer, but do they struggle to understand, did they typically buy from another category? Was it an agency before they started using your platform?
2 cases. One, will have people that have worked with 3 cases. One, we have people that have worked with agencies before and it's not worked out. And I feel like agencies have adopted this really bad reputation of over-promising and under-delivering. And I think that it's helped me come from being a freelancer and actually getting it done, and then evolving into an agency to enable DSLX to actually overpromise and over-deliver on everything that we do. But normally they've either worked with an agency before, they've tried to source talent on Upwork or one of these bigger platforms and have just been inundated with requests of people cold pitching and massively trying to undermine each other's price tags just to get the client. And it can be a bit overwhelming to compete in those markets from freelancers and for people looking to hire freelancers. And 3, our last buyer is usually someone that has built a small team and then is like, we can't do this in-house anymore. This is so much bigger and it's going to take us so long to hire full-time talent in-house. Like it could take 2 to 3 months. And we've been with clients, we've been interim with clients while they've been looking for a content marketing manager for 9 months and they still haven't found one. So they just go to an agency, they come to DSLX and they say, can you step in while we hire this role? Can you step in? We're building up this team. And then it's on us to prove, actually, they don't need to look and build these people in-house if we're enough of a feature in-house, but just live under another roof.
No, once they understand, they can get you in immediately because it's so quick to start, I imagine. Yeah. They think it's a stopgap, but then you deliver such a great service that it's not a stopgap. It ends up being a replacement. So
exactly.
Awesome. I saw there was one other question. In fact, I think Adam's just answered Link's question out to the freelancers that work within your platform. How many have been hired to work for you? So Dave, you just answered that, right?
Yeah, I did. So I mean, my background coming from Top Coder at Distributed is all about leveraging the community as much as possible. I always ask the community. I say, Dave, tell everyone, and Dave actually does this because he's a freelancer, was a freelancer, is always like, the first inclination is to go hire someone. And my first ask is like, well, is there someone in the community that can do that? Can we find someone in the community, right? We're building this community. Is there someone, a freelancer, that can do that? So my ask to everyone here is always, that's the first question, is like, you have that inclination to be like, I want to go hire someone. Well, is there someone in a platform somewhere that you can go find? Right?
Yeah. Flex first, fix second. Did anyone, so I didn't know whether anyone was asking a question. Let me just say a huge thank you to Ray, Adam, and Dave. I think it's been a really, really interesting discussion in an area that's slightly different. You do think of freelance talent platforms always linking me with an individual. And so it's really good, I think, to think about platforms as so varied, so diverse, and be able to provide 2 completely different services with the examples we've had today and how you get over the availability and compliance and all of the things we've discussed. So thank you. It's been really educational. I've certainly really enjoyed it. I hope everybody else has too. Any final summary notes, John or Brandon?
Oh, that was great. Thanks, Barry. Thanks for leading that. And I agree with you. And I really feel like we're at this age where people want outcomes and teams are a step towards outcomes, right? Like, like I need to get this thing done. And certainly, like you said, it's a variation of freelancing, but I think it's an important one for the future for sure. And I love what these guys are doing, and it's great to see the momentum that they have. So
Absolutely.
Great conversation.
Thanks, everybody. Our next call is June 15th. We're going to have Tammy Browning, president of Kelly OCG, presenting their new research, the 2023 Global Workforce Report. So mark your calendars for that one. It should be great. And this recording will be up on the blog in about less than 24 hours. And thank you so much for the great conversation.
Good to see you
Thanks
all.
so much, everyone. Pleasure.
Bye-bye.